Good morning again. In Kenya, technology is one of the key drivers of the economy. We believe that it is the future. We have multiple challenges that we're working on. One is access to information. We believe people not having the right information does not allow the right decisions to be taken. So we need to know who we are serving, where we are serving them. There's being able to ensure that our budgeting and our processes work. So by bringing in the technology, we're able, one, to save on our resources, manage our resources better, create more efficiency. And we have seen in some of the products and services that are being offered in the country, M-Pesa is well known to many. It's technology-based. It's been able to save a lot of money and be able to grow a lot of wealth for many Kenyans. Using technology, we've been able to see that we can leapfrog, we can move faster and be able to improve people's lives even better.
I really believe that Africa is the giant which needs to be tapped into, and that perhaps the SDGs is much more applicable to Africa than it is to anywhere else in the world. And let me just give you some statistics very quickly. The healthcare business in Africa is going to be $300 billion worth in the next 10 years, which is by 2030. The agro-business sector in Africa is going to be $1 trillion worth by 2030. The affordable housing space is going to be $600 to $700 billion worth by 2030. The future of manufacturing, which includes the blue economy, the green economy, and everything else that goes towards it, is going to be in the range of $5 to $7 trillion. So I really believe that if you look at Africa purely in terms of the demographic transition which is happening, by 2050, we will have 2.3 billion people, of which 850 million will be just young people. That market potential is of such significance where perhaps the new Marshall Plan, which happened post-Second World War, this will be the Marshall Plan which will have to be led by the private sector. And that is why the private sector, in concert with governments, needs to come into the place in the accomplishment of the SDGs. Why? Because if you look at the first 5 goals of the SDGs, it's the unfinished business. It's about zero poverty. It's about zero hunger. It's about universal health coverage. It's about education and the quality of skills that we need. And finally, and most importantly, it's about the issue of gender. And I see, the issue of women perhaps flagged here.
Now, amazing American entrepreneurs and big corporations like Google. Google set up the AI shop, I think, in Ghana now. IBM has an R&D facility in Kenya. And AWS has a huge presence in South Africa. So we've seen a huge leap in terms of why the risk appetite has now kind of diminished over time because of all these amazing stats that my colleague from the UN just mentioned, because that's where the future is. And one of the things I want to talk about is that unless African countries embrace this emergence in a very meaningful way, not in this kind of liberal sentiment of just, it's kumbaya that we need to invest in Africa, but in putting policies that attracts these type of investments, what will happen is, indulge me for a second, I'm a geek of time travel. If you don't do that with a timeline that he's talking about, 2050 or 2060, all these timelines, then Africa, if it does not get into the future, such as 5G and things like that, the time travel that will happen would be you will be going to some of these African countries to visit 1980s, to visit 1990s, from that perspective, okay? So I think we can't wait. Leapfrogging is an overused term, but the future has to be invented in Africa, not in essence imported to it. So those are the type of engagements, at least from the state side, from the State Department side, we recognize the future belongs to Africa, and how do we then become partners to it? My colleagues from Commerce talked about Prosper Africa. I know USAID is doing a lot of great work, but from a policy perspective, we're engaging, especially in the future of technology such as 5G. I mean, I think the panel is talking about accountability and transparency from a digital Africa perspective. Then we can't ignore the fact that we can't really say 5G is really not ready for Africa, or Africa is not ready for 5G, because that's where the future is.
Anyway, Shelby, you've been doing some fascinating research on disinformation campaigns in Africa. Perhaps you could tell us about that.
Yeah, so my team at the Stanford Internet Observatory identified, in collaboration with Facebook about 2 months ago, 73 Facebook pages targeting Mozambique, Madagascar, DRC, CAR, Libya, Sudan, that were linked to Yevgeny Prigozhin, who is a Russian oligarch with ties to Putin and has kind of mining interests throughout Africa. And so my team analyzed these 73 Facebook pages. It was a pretty big operation. They were really prolific. So in a random month last year, the pages had posted 9,000 posts, and they were liked by almost 2 million accounts. And generally, the pages existed to curry favor with ruling parties, perhaps because Prigozhin wanted to get mining concessions. So to give like one really straightforward example, the Mozambique pages were created in September of last year, and they existed exclusively to support the ruling Frelimo party in advance of elections that happened in October. So the posts would be like a photo of the incumbent president at like a rally, and there'd be like a really big crowd at the rally. So that's kind of like an overview of the project.